Vida além do planeta Terra. Segundo o Instituto de Astronomia, Geofísica e Ciências Atmosféricas, a idade aproximada do universo é de 13,8 bilhões de anos. A área do universo observável é de aproximadamente 93 bilhões de anos-luz. Cada ano-luz é equivalente a 9,5 trilhões de quilômetros. Um dos objetos mais distantes observados pelo homem são os quasares. Para chegar lá, teríamos que sair da Terra e viajar cerca de 13 bilhões de anos-luz. O espaço universal é infinito ou limitado? Infinito. Imagina o limitado. O que haveria além? Isso confunde tua razão, bem o sei. Todavia, tua razão te diz que não pode ser de outra maneira. O mesmo se dá com o infinito em todas as coisas. Não é na vossa pequenina esfera que podeis compreendê-lo. Se imaginarmos um limite para o espaço, por mais distante que o pensamento possa concebê-lo, a razão diz que, além deste limite, há alguma coisa e assim, gradativamente, até o infinito. Existe em alguma parte no espaço universal? Não, nada está vazio. O que está vazio para ti está ocupado por uma matéria que escapa aos teus sentidos e aos teus instrumentos. Cerca de 400 anos antes de Cristo, o filósofo grego Metrodoro de Quios já afirmava que considerar a Terra como o único mundo habitado no espaço infinito é tão absurdo quanto afirmar que numa extensa planície só cresce uma espiga de trigo. O universo observável tem aproximadamente 200 bilhões de galáxias e somente na nossa galáxia o número de planetas pode passar de 100 bilhões. Será que estamos sozinhos no espaço-tempo? A vida começa no berço e termina no túmulo? Independente da diversidade de religiões e filosofias, essas perguntas já têm respostas racionais. E obteve respostas que a ciência atual começa a revelar.
These beings are very eager to find humans who are enlightened enough to approach them peacefully, because what our covert classified military projects have been doing is to try to track these objects and shoot them down. I mean, their whole game is cat and mouse where they're trying to destroy them. So,
is that what Star Wars was really about? I mean,
yes.
the satellites and all during the Reagan administration?
Yes, and of course, and I have been, if people go to disclosureproject.org, they'll see that we have testimony from over 100 top-secret military and intelligence witnesses who've dealt with this issue, and a number of them describe our attempts to down and to attack these objects. It's a very dangerous and foolish thing that we're doing, and it's threatening the equilibrium of the world, quite frankly, because...
So when do you think they're coming?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, I think they've been here around for many thousands of years. I seriously doubt it's a recent phenomenon. I think that if you look at this, and in talking to people in British intelligence and the people in the United States military, the real increase in these events happened around the time we started detonating nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I get that.
And at the same time we started going out into space. I mean, I think you have to understand that any civilization that has reached a point of peaceful coexistence who would see us evolving out of the time of World War II into this post-World War II period where we began to go into space, but at the same time began to develop hydrogen bombs and nuclear weapons. I think this would put a big red flag over this planet, and my understanding is that they're quite concerned about what we're doing to this planet, and that also that we not be turned loose on the universe, where we could be a threat to other planets that are existing peacefully and do not even have the concept of warfare and weapon systems. And so,
because it's not just about this planet, right? I mean, it's about what happens on this planet affects the totality of reality.
Of course, in every thought and conscious action, but when there are mega system events that happen on a planet like this, it certainly affects other worlds, and it affects the equilibrium of the cosmos in general. So there's a serious reason for their being here. I think number one, they're observing what we're doing and watching us make this big transition from a fractured sort of warring world to a peaceful civilization, and we are going to make that transition. It may not all be smooth, but we'll make it. And I think, meanwhile, they're wanting to be sure that we don't become a threat elsewhere. And I think they're also wanting to start to open up contact with people who are peaceful and enlightened enough to understand how to make contact and why they should be making contact. Yeah. One of the things I point out to people is that a lot of folks will say, well, you know, what if some of them are hostile? I said, well, the only ones that are hostile are the ones that are being manufactured by humans. And the big mythology in the New Age world is that they're the good ones and the bad ones, and in reality, most of that is disinformation created by the intelligence community to scare people, because eventually they would like to have us put all these weapons in space and spend trillions of dollars on Star Wars type stuff. And this is exactly what we've already done it. But I mean, I have folks who worked on these in the 1960s, where we already had weapon systems that were based in space that were targeting these extraterrestrial vehicles. So this has been going on for 40 years. There's not just one race that's visiting us, though, right? I mean, do you get that? Oh, there are dozens. Yeah. And none of them are hostile, and none of them are harmful. And some of them are quite worried about our hostility and have done things to try to contain us. And I think that containment, like a quarantine type of exercise, has enraged some in our classified military projects, and they don't understand why these beings would not want us, for example, to be traveling with our experimental anti-gravity vehicles, which we have, all the way out to Mars or all the way out to some of the other planets. And the reason they don't want us out there is because we're not going out there with the right intention. So the core to making contact with these beings, and the key to humans as a species being welcome in space, is establishing universal peace. World peace won't cut it. Yeah. It's not going to be enough just that we have peace on Earth. We also have to have universal peace, which is what we're telling people, is that it has to evolve into an understanding that peace has to occur not just on Earth, but our whole attitude towards the cosmos has to become peaceful, or we're not going to be allowed to fulfill our potential to become ourselves interstellar beings. Boy, Stephen, we have a lot in common. This is awesome. Well, you know what I find fascinating is that there are so many instances where the military has fired on the ships. I mean, even going down to Mexico and interfering with things that were going on down there, our government. And I don't know of any instance where any of the ships have fired back or done anything destructive. No, it has never happened. And, you know, if you go to a UFO conference, quote unquote, you'll find that at 90 to 95% of everything being shared there is some type of concocted disinformation designed to scare the bejeebies out of people. Yeah. Because, you know, just like 9/11, the way that you control the masses is through fear, which is the opposite of love and the opposite of peace. And I think that this psychological warfare technique has been used for, since the beginning of time, for demagogues to control the masses. And yet, when our team has gone out all over the world, I mean, you have to understand, we have had an advanced diplomatic team that has gone all over the world to areas where these ET beings are being seen. We've made contact. We've had nothing but the most beautiful and peaceful encounters. You know, all these stories of mutilation and abductions and torture and sexual rape and all this negative, horrible stuff, that's all disinformation or counterintelligence activities. Now, there are people in the classified programs that are human that stage those events for their psychological warfare purposes. I have a document from 1953 where the CIA stated that one of the key values of the UFO issue would be in their psychological warfare value. And it's a very interesting document. And I have another document, and people need to get this book called Disclosure, that have all these government documents that we have acquired and the testimony of all these military and intelligence witnesses, because they describe clearly what is really going on behind the scenes and why the media is deceived and why the public is deceived on this issue. Mm-hmm. And one of the deceptions is to try to present this idea that there's some kind of hostile threat from outer space, because they're trying to lay the foundation for future war in space. And this is what we have to resist. We have to resist this siren song of greed coming from the military-industrial complex and the sort of orthodox eschatologists, the people who would like to figure out how to precipitate an end-of-the-world scenario like these books Left Behind and all this sort of fundamentalism. Those are the guys running this program.
Yeah.
These classified programs are filled with really kooky people from the lunatic fringe of the religious extremists. And so people have to understand that this is the opposite of where our civilization is really headed, and these are the dying gasps of a dying world order.
There was something that I read in your book that kind of stunned me, and although it didn't surprise me, it was just, and that is that there are certain abduction programs that are being funded by people on the Earth.
Oh, yeah. Well, these are, if it's an abduction, it's human. If it's contact, it's ET. I tell people this is all linguistic, perhaps, but there are lots of people who've had ET contact, and there are lots of people who've been victims of these abductions, which are run by humans. For example, I have personally interviewed several military men, one of whom was an Army Ranger, who worked on special projects that were compartmented, where they were using what are called alien reproduction vehicles. And these are things that look like a flying saucer or a UFO that's made by Lockheed and Northrop. And they had either costumes on or used what are called PLFs, program life forms, that look like extraterrestrial beings, but they're not. They're completely man-made, to abduct or frighten people so that there would begin to be this subculture awareness of fear, and so that they can eventually ramp that up in sort of a cosmic Gulf of Tonkin scenario to stampede military and political leaders and the masses into accepting the cost of building weapons in space and getting into an interplanetary war. It's a matter of public record that General Douglas MacArthur, in his last speech to Congress, stated that, quote, World War III will be interplanetary war. So this has been in the planning stages since at least the 60s and perhaps the 50s. And so much of the imaging and so much of the subculture awareness on this is being driven by a virulent, well-funded, and high-tech human technological disinformation campaign that's designed to scare people. And what I tell people is that you've got to be able to look through this, it's like the movie The Matrix, this sort of matrix of deception and nonsense, and see what's really true. Because people, unfortunately, because of our sort of primitive brains, have this flight or fight response and tend to believe a threat because we're trained in our tribal roots to be paranoid of the unknown.
Right.
It's the roots of racism. It's the roots of hatred. And I think that this is something we have to resist, because there are people who are deliberately throwing fuel on that fire in a very deceptive way. And what I've tried to explain in this new book is that I have gone into meetings with folks who are in charge of those deceptive programs and have actually acquired documents from institutes that are planning this, quote, I'm using the term used in this top secret document, stagecraft, to simulate these sort of frightening experiences. So I tell people, don't be afraid of the extraterrestrial visitors, but you should be very concerned about these other agendas, and we have to be the counterbalance to that. See, we're the children of Earth, and we alone can transform this planet and prepare it for a time of universal peace.
But people that are contactees do go onto the ships, and sometimes I know do get certain markings on their bodies or other things. And when I read that, where I went was into confusion about, okay, what's what? That's kind of where it took me. okay, if you're a contactee, you pretty well know you are for the most part. But then you get in, then, you start finding that you have marks on your body or different things, which I've talked about on the show before. It's a subject that I'm very interested in. And I was just a little confused about the difference there and what you were talking about.
Well, I think there are people who have had actual contact with ETs that then have one of these paramilitary groups engage them in a pseudo contact event that's an abduction, and so that's deliberately confusing. Okay. And so I think that you have to take every case on its own merits. I know when they have tried to target people in my group with that kind of experience, because we have this information, we have documents and insider whistleblower testimony about the technologies they're using to do this. We're able to discern between the false contact disinformation events, abductions, and the real contact events. But, this is where knowledge really is power. Without the knowledge that there's the real thing versus this Memorex pseudo thing, you're not going to be able to distinguish it. And unfortunately, I think many people can't imagine that the human capabilities have evolved to where they have. And I point out to people that many of the capabilities that I'm describing existed by the 1950s.
Oh, yeah. We're unlimited in scope of consciousness and what we're able to do with it.
No, I'm talking about classified projects that have have weapon systems and things that look like UFOs that aren't. And
but then there's so many people that have abduction type descriptions and yet no real memories. They think it was a dream, or they wake up with marks and they don't know where they're coming from. And that's why I got confused about what you were talking about. I just wanted to clarify it for me as much as everybody else.
Well, you have to take each case on its merits, and you're not going to know is it real or is it Memorex without doing a very careful investigation. The problem is that if you go to people who deal with this issue, they don't know that there's a parallel human deception program that's extremely high-tech, and they're going to confuse the real contact with the false stuff. Why? Because they don't know the false is even possible. And I remember talking to someone who did research on this once, and when I started talking about the EG&G, which is a big high-tech electronics company that was making the implants, the involvement of E-Systems and Raytheon, the fact that Northrop and SAIC and Lockheed were building things that look absolutely like an ET craft, but they're man-made, the whole concept of stagecraft. They didn't know this whole body of evidence. And I'm going, well, you better learn about it because you're not going to be able to discern. It's like a doctor not knowing the difference between chest pain from a heart attack and chest pain from a pneumonia that's eaten into the lining of the lungs or something. So, you've got to have a differential diagnosis, and knowledge is the greatest purifier, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, and that's very, very true. Unfortunately, most of what is out there that passes for information on this subject, which is consumed in books and videos and TV shows and what have you, is deliberate false information or disinformation designed for a certain psychological conditioning response, primarily to condition people to be afraid. And what I've said to people is, well, let's put all that aside and let's actually go out to these places and make contact with a group of people who understand the technology of contact. And we go out not only with these consciousness technologies we're using, but also with laser systems and electromagnetic sounds that we send up and all these things. And we, and see what happens, and let's see if there's anything to be afraid of. And there's not. I mean, the only time we've ever had anything remotely frightening is when we've been, chased by police or had, military helicopter aircraft come down and put searchlights on us and things like this. But nothing from the ETs has been at all worrisome. It's all been humans. So I tell people that a lot of, in a sense, this is sort of a cosmic Rorschach test. It's a sort of a cosmic mirror. The way people view this is a reflection of their own inner state of knowledge and consciousness.
For 22 and a half years, I served in the United States Army. During my tenure, I was on many occasions asked to serve as the official, unofficial UFO consultant dealing with UFO matters in the areas of my assignment. As a result of my involvement, I was able to ascertain that the United States government knew a whole lot more about UFOs than it was telling the American public. That there was an intelligence involved, that there was a highly evolved technology. I learned that to a degree we were carrying on a dialogue with this intelligence. We were making every effort we could to acquire this technology and make it part of our own existing technology. We did this, I was told, in the interest of national security. We also had an officially sanctioned deception program. This was in total disregard as to the impact this would have on the individual witnesses and also on their families. This ultimately led to my disillusionment with the program and my involvement in it. I sincerely feel that no government has the right to destroy the lives of the people which it is supposed to serve. While I was in the military and I got to the point where I was no longer interested in trying to be part of the program and actually was going against the program, and I started to be very open and talking about what was going on. This resulted in every effort being made to try to destroy my military career. I was threatened and they even tried to force my military retirement, or I could face possible court-martial. These actions failed, of course, as you know. At one point, I even had an individual come up to me, point a gun at my head, and inform me we could have a training accident, and this would end this foolishness once and for all. I firmly believe that those of us that served in a capacity of the U.S. government in some form or fashion, and who were exposed to the truth, we have a moral obligation to the UFO witnesses, the real victims of the UFO phenomena, to expose once and for all this policy and to reveal the truth, and that is, we are not alone in the universe.
Robert Dean has a list of credentials a mile long. He served 4 years from 1963 to 1967 at Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers, Europe, the military arm of NATO. He was an intelligence analyst with a cosmic top-secret clearance.
Well, Don, it began for me in 1963 when I was assigned to the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe. I arrived in the summer of '63 and I was assigned to the Operations Division. I was further assigned to what we call SHOC, the War Room, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center. And at that time I was given a cosmic top-secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When I was assigned to the War Room, I learned that a study had been initiated in 1961, and everybody was talking about it. They were gossiping about it. And the subject was UFOs, and that intrigued me a bit. When that study was concluded in 1964 and it was published, and I was still working in the War Room at that time, I had access to this document. I had a chance to read it. And having been exposed to it, I must tell you honestly that my life has never ever quite been the same. Because I read first-hand reports, verifiable NATO military material that indicated that the UFOs were not only real, that they represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. The point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, "Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House?" And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The SHAPE conclusions in '64 was that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1976, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. They had concluded by '76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source. The evidence that we had collected and the evidence that they had repeatedly demonstrated to us, and that's no accident. It became very clear after a time that there was a program or a process of some kind underway, that they had demonstrated over and over and over again that they apparently were able to manipulate matter and time. Now, this really shook up our scientists. There are a lot of new young scientists in particle physics today who talk about multiple dimensions. There's a brilliant young professor in New York by the name of Michio Kaku, who has written a brilliant book called Hyperspace, where they talk about 10 separate dimensions. I'm not enough of a physicist to try to explain to you what a dimension is, but the idea that there could be intelligences from somewhere else, from other dimensions, coming and going into our reality. It's been quite a shakeup in traditional science. I guess I speak out openly and bluntly about this because I feel so strongly about it. I violate my security oath every time I speak about it. I do it intentionally, and I do it on purpose, because I feel so strongly that the American people not only have a right to know the truth, but they have a need to know the truth. The truth, Don, apparently is simply this, that we're not alone, we've never been alone. We are apparently part of an infinite universe filled with intelligent life. I find that exciting. It doesn't frighten me. The SHAPE study concluded in '64 that if they, whoever they were malevolent or hostile, that they could have taken this planet and cleaned it up and eliminated us, turned us into dog food or whatever, a long, long time ago. That the historical evidence indicates that they've been with us a long time, and I've concluded that we had what I like to call an intimate interrelationship with at least one of those groups, the group that looks exactly like we do. And that point is, I don't like the word alien. I don't think the term alien is appropriate at all here. I like to refer to them as family. We're related to them. I think they had a hand in our being here. And I think the time has come where we're about to meet our extended family. It's going to be very soon, and the people are not ready. And one of the reasons I do speak out so bluntly and so openly is if in some small way I can help people get prepared for this. Because I believe that this reality, once we have accepted it and understood it and gone beyond the fear, will bring about an expansion of consciousness in the human race that will truly help us and prepare us to go out there and take our rightful place in that infinite community of life.
One man who definitely believes in aliens is Labour councillor Simon Parkes. What's more, he claims he's having an affair with one, and after the story hit the headlines, he's now facing calls to quit.
Well, he joins us now, and we'll come to all of those calls in a moment after we've heard some of the story, which is remarkable, extraordinary, and starts before you were even born.
Well, first of all, can I say how pleased I am that you've invited me to your show.
Oh.
It's delightful to be here,
Well,
live and on air.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, my first memories are very, very early.
So in the womb?
Yes.
And because very few people, if any others that I've ever met, can remember that far back. So how come you can remember what was happening in the womb?
You're absolutely right. Most people can't remember. For some reason, I have a very good memory. I can't answer your question as to why I know, just that I do have a...
So what do you remember from
I
that?
have a very clear memory of a face, just a face, no real distinct features, and then suddenly being aware that there was much more to this world than I knew. It was a far wider spiritual experience, and then it just closed down, and that's all I remember.
And your first time you came face to face with an alien was when you were about sort of 6 to 8 months?
No, I would have come face to face with such a creature much earlier. The one you're referring to, I think, is a little bit later.
Okay, so when the first one then?
About 3 months old, 3 months,
Okay.
4 months old.
And what does this alien look like? Because obviously we have images in our mind of the ones that we see, you know, in movies or that sort of image. What did your alien look like?
You're absolutely right. Hollywood's very good at putting out little creatures that people know as greys. This one researchers call a mantid, or in America it's referred to as a mantis. It's a green creature. It's about 7 foot tall, and this one wore a robe or a cloak, purple coloured. There we go, that's one of my drawings there.
Oh, okay.
And the creature literally reached into the cot that I was in. I remember it distinctly. It had wooden bars, green, yellow, red, blue, with like an abacus, painted abacus on the top. And this creature just reached and lifted me up, and then I was actually tilted over to look straight into its face.
So these are experiences, and you don't use the word abduction, but you use the word contact, because
Yes.
you are a willing subject,
Yes.
a willing participant. So from the moment there when you were obviously very young, and you were meeting them in their various guises, when was the first time that you believed that you had contact outside of your living environment? I want to say the word abducted, obviously, but when were you taken? When did you go?
That's a very incisive question. It's a very good question. In those early days, I wouldn't know they were aliens. To me, they were just things that came to visit me, and they were not distinguishable from my real family. Because these things have never hurt me, I never built up any sort of scaremongering or fear of them. I think from about 1963, that was my first experience of being taken off the earth into a craft.
And what did that? Can you remember what that looked like?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was not a traditional Hollywood type flying saucer. It was a teardrop-shaped craft. If you can imagine a teardrop, like a water drop, but with the blunt end going forward and the pointy end at the back.
Wow. And one of the aliens wanted to be your mother, or said that she was your mother. And that must have been quite confusing, because, I mean, how old would you have been then?
Well, very young.
Very young. So that's what I mean. It's quite a difficult thing to comprehend. And you had your human mother.
Yes.
And that did lead to a bit of confusion there for you, didn't
yes,
it?
It did.
And in fact, you called your human mother Daddy for a while.
Correct.
Because you couldn't work out why you had...
Well, why would I need two mothers? Exactly. So I already had a mother, so this person can't be my mother, it must be my daddy. And then as you get older, you realise that certain things are not acceptable in human society. So I stopped saying daddy and mummy and got the words right, and learnt not to be open, not to discuss it, because outside of the very close family, most people can't handle it.
And so this progressed through your childhood, and quite early on you lost your virginity to one of these aliens who, now this is quite a confused part of the story here, because from what I read, the alien turned themselves into the woman from the Fry's Turkish Delight advert.
Yes, this is holographic, so I wouldn't have actually lost my virginity. This is a holographic image. We think we have some wonderful technology here on this earth, but the technology that I've seen far surpasses anything that we have here, or at least anything that the military tell us they have. This was a holographic experience.
How old were you?
That would be about 1965.
What age were you then?
I would be about 5 or 6.
You lost your virginity at 6 years old?
No, I didn't say that. It was a holographic representation.
So you had a sexual encounter?
With, exactly,
at 6 years old?
Absolutely, yes.
So age doesn't matter to them?
No, because it's about experience, it's about your soul. I know in the West we don't really understand souls, but in the East and in the Bible, they actually understand souls very, very clearly.
You went on to have non-holographic sex with an alien called a lion lady. Yes, and although you weren't attracted to her, you said that wasn't really what it was about. It wasn't like what we have here, where there's sort of, for the majority of people, there has to be a sort of attraction. It was for other means.
This is an incredibly difficult subject for most people to understand, and I fully appreciate that most people can't get their head around it. We're talking about creatures that have the ability to enter your mind, to go into your mind and give you images, and to make you think one thing when actually you think another. So I think these creatures would have actually come into my mind and made me appear to love them, because otherwise you wouldn't actually have a sexual reaction with anybody unless you felt something for them. So I think it's more to do with that than anything else.
Does that not bother you that they're doing that?
Well,
I mean, I'd be quite upset if someone came into my mind and convinced me that I fancied them.
Yeah, the thing is, I've seen these creatures ever since I was very young. From a very early age. And when you realise that humanity is not the only thing in this galaxy, in this whole
That was a UFO.
Well, only if it was.
Only a fly.
It could land on the White House lawn, couldn't it? When you get used to these creatures and you realise that mankind is literally just a pinprick in a massive constellation, some things become less important.
I can get my head around that. In the great vastness of the universe, I think I always thought it's hugely arrogant to assume that we might be the only ones that were here. But why did they pick you? What is their agenda? Do they plan eventually to take over?
That's a question that I've asked them, and I've always made clear in all of the presentations that I've done that I don't consider myself special. I don't consider myself important at all. And the best way to answer it would be to give the answer they gave. And they said that Earth scientists trap a wild animal, put a tag on it, follow it. When it has cubs, they'll put tags on those cubs, and they'll follow those wild animals for 20, 30 years, generation after generation. And in the same way, these creatures follow generational lines of humans right back from Egyptian times, Babylonian times, Sumerian times.
So this is what they followed your soul through the generations.
Correct. And then just to answer the other question that you said, no, because if they wanted to take over the Earth in the traditional Hollywood style, they'd have done it in the Stone Age, when all we would have had would have been bows and arrows.
When was the last time you had an encounter, and what was it?
It would be about 6 weeks ago, and that would have been just a general encounter for a health check.
They checked your health?
Absolutely.
And are you in good health?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in alien health.
I'm 53 years of age.
And I thought you were going to say you're 553 years old.
I tell you what, if I would start, marketing some wonderful medicines.
Yeah.
But why? But when you say you're just picking you, the Labour councillor from Whitby, you would have thought that. Did they have some sort of grand plan for you? Were they, think, oh my God, we thought this guy was going to be Prime Minister?
No, when they picked me, as you call it, I wasn't a Labour councillor. I was a very small child.
But they would have known what you were going to become, because they could see into the future.
I think. Sorry.
Sorry, no, please.
No, it's okay. Go on, ladies first.
Okay, I was going to say, did you realise when you came out and finally spoke about this, because you said earlier on that within your family, they said, let's not talk about this outside of the confines of the family because people don't understand. And obviously you've come out and you've said it, and it's gone very public, and we're talking about it now. And people have said he shouldn't be working. We don't want him as our councillor anymore. How do you feel about that?
OK, well, that's old news, that's old hat, because when I first went public, about 3 years ago, the same angry people who sit on their armchairs and get very angry, I'm sure it's the same people made the comment. And all I would say to them is, vent your angry spleen on those members of Parliament who stole money, who defrauded the country, on those members of Parliament who got other people to take their penalty points for them, on those great tycoon bankers who nearly destroyed this country. I haven't broken any law. When I was elected, I'd already gone public, so the people already knew, and it came up 6 times on the doorstep. On 4 occasions it was positive, 1 occasion was negative, and on the last occasion the gentleman concerned didn't give a damn as long as his wheelie bin was emptied before 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. What people want is somebody to fight and defend the community of Whitby. And I did hear that Mr. Portillo had made a comment about me, and I won't take any lectures from Mr. Portillo. My policies are very strong, very clear, and as a fellow politician, although on a different party, he would be better attacking my policies and not what is a personal issue. And just to finally finish off, nobody's asked me to resign because this is a private matter.
And you can do your job as a counsellor to the best of your ability because you are there all the time. What happens when you're taken away from medical? I mean, who's doing the job then?
Very, very good question. The best thing I say to people is speak to the chief officer, speak to my colleagues of the same party or other party, and see what they say about me.
Do you disappear when you go for a medical?
You can be taken physically, and I have actually been taken with other people as well, so they know.
And do your family wonder where you are?
The close family often wonder where I am. But just to finish off the question there, I am not taken during meetings, which is very thankful, because I would think there would be quite a lot of consternation. These creatures do not want attention drawn to themselves, and the last thing they would do is visit or take during a large gathering of people.
What do they feel about you talking out now about them?
Clearly they don't have an agenda either way, because I would have been stopped if they were against it.
Okay. Fascinating. Thank you very much.
It's been really interesting.
I'm very
Thank
pleased
you.
to meet both
Thank you,
of you.
and you too. Thank you. Right, let's get some reaction to that story from Emma in the Hub.
The comments have been coming in. Claire said, I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to this story. Brilliant viewing and good for Simon. Susie Quinn said, I think imagination is a wonderful thing, but some stuff is maybe best kept to yourself. Josie has emailed, I couldn't believe this story, so I've stayed in all morning to watch it. Now I've seen it, I'm speechless. Amazing to watch. And Jackie Findley asks, why is it that only people with an alien fixation ever get to see them? I've never heard of anyone that has no interest in them having an alien encounter. And finally, Wendy Dolin has emailed to say, good for him, who cares what he believes? As long as he's good at his job, it doesn't matter.
Are there lots of people like you around who just haven't come forward?
One of the reasons that I've come forward like this is to give strength and confidence to others to come forward, because then the media will change. If 1,000 people came forward on Monday and 1,000 on Tuesday, by Wednesday the attitude of the media would be very different.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, still to come.